Hey everybody, Jason Bermas here, and the indictment is out in the wild. It's rather short. It's only, I believe, 14 pages long. So what we're going to do is read the entire thing, and there has also been a press conference. I have not yet watched the 25-minute or so press conference, but that's going to be the next video, the next step. After we read this indictment, I'll go through that, I'll come back on air, and we will definitely go over some of the talking points, the highs and lows of that conference. Now, before we read the entire indictment, this is the new indictment regarding the New York mansion and sex trafficking. Some of the highlights I was able to skim through are the fact that there will be asset forfeiture. This is huge. This is absolutely huge, guys. So some of the other things that are making their ways around mainstream media I thought I'd go over before we get right to the document is that Epstein is allegedly staying in the same prison as El Chapo. So, that made a headline here. Big deal, but there it is right there. Then it has been confirmed that, yes, James Comey's daughter will be one of the federal prosecutors working on the Epstein case. So take that as you will, but confirmation 100%. Maureen Comey, she is an assistant United States attorney in the Southern District of New York, and she will be a federal prosecutor on this case. And, the media is trying to really emphasize the Trump-Epstein relationship, but we've done so many videos, including the past couple about that, we're not even going to go over it much. Now, here's some more spin, in my opinion. Forbes is putting out an article today, literally within the last couple of hours, why sex offender Jeffrey Epstein is not a billionaire. Expect a lot of spin pieces out there, okay? Expect it. But we don't spin, we read documents. So let's do it. Let's read the entire 14-page indictment with analysis right now. And like I said, after we do this video, guys, we're going to go over the entire press conference and any other Epstein breaking news. As set forth herein, over the course of many years, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, sexually exploited and abused dozens of minor girls at his home in Manhattan, New York, and Palm Beach, Florida, among other locations. So let's just stop there for a second. And if you've watched my previous videos, this is a good look at the network that was international. Take a good look at it. They got him at Teterboro Airport here in New Jersey. He was coming back from Paris, France. Okay? So let's get back to the indictment document. In particular, from at least 2002 and up, okay, to and including at least in or about 2005, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, enticed and recruited and caused to be enticed and recruited minor girls to visit his mansion in Manhattan, New York, the New York residence. Thank you so much, Penny and Andrew, about the super chat. We'll get to it in just a moment. And his estate in Palm Beach, Florida, to engage in sex acts with him, after which he would give the victims hundreds of dollars in cash. Moreover, and in order to maintain and increase his supply of victims, Epstein also paid certain members or certain of his victims to recruit additional girls to be similarly abused by Epstein. In this way, Epstein created a vast network of underage victims for him to sexually exploit in locations including New York and Palm Beach. And if you watch my video on Jane Doe number 43, I think it's an extremely important video, and it goes into a lot of these allegations. And it has the co-defendants in them. And again, I've searched these people out, from Leslie Groff to, Natalia Maleshev, and they have aliases, Sarah Kellen. These are named as co-defendants in some of the unsealed documents, guys. Okay? So the victims described and herein were as young as 14 years old at the time they were abused by Epstein and the defendant, and were, for various reasons, often particularly vulnerable to exploitation. Epstein intentionally sought out minors, and he knew that many of his victims were in fact under the age of 18, including because, in some instances, minor victims expressly told him their age. Of course they did. And let's get to this really quick super chat here. You've been doing a great job. Great interview with Tinfoil Hat. Keep up the good work. Use the 5 to get the kids some Slurpees on the next walk and talk. I don't know about Slurpees. They had ice cream the other day, and I try to keep the sugar down on my nieces. All right. In creating and maintaining this network of minor victims in multiple states to sexually abuse and exploit, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, worked and conspired with others, including employees and associates who facilitated his contact by, among other things, contacting victims and scheduling their sexual encounters with Epstein at the New York office residence and at the Palm Beach residence. And if you believe Jane Doe number 43 and her allegations, this went on for much longer, a much more extended period of time. Let me see if I can find that one and bring it up because it's so important. There it is right there. Remember, these are the co-conspirators laid out in the document from 2017 where they also allege this was still going on then. And Maria Farmer from 1995, who was of age, said she went to the FBI and she was the door girl at the New York Manhattan mansion where she saw underage models dressed in school outfits going upstairs for auditions. So there are the other names right here other than Epstein and Maxwell. You have Kellen, Groff, and Malashev. And there's other ones. This is just Jane Doe 43. So when they say this network is vast, this network is vast. During all the time periods charged in this indictment, Epstein, the defendant, was a financier to multiple residents in the continental United States, including the New York residence and the Palm Beach residence, beginning in at least 2002. And again, the evidence is much starker than that, guys. The defendant enticed and recruited and caused to be enticed and recruited dozens of minor girls to engage in sex acts with him, after which Epstein paid the victims hundreds of dollars in cash at the New York residence or Palm Beach. In New York and Florida, Epstein, the defendant, perpetrated this abuse in similar ways. Victims were initially recruited to provide massages to Epstein, which would be performed nude or partially nude, would become increasingly sexual in nature, and would typically include one or more sex acts. Again, none of this is new. Read that indictment from 43. It alleges that Sarah Kalin was basically almost like the secretary there, would lead them through the kitchen. As they went up the stairs, they would see naked pictures or partially nude pictures of girls. They would get into the massage room and similar things would be there. So again, none of this is new, but this is a brand new indictment based in New York alone. Epstein paid his victims hundreds of dollars in cash each encounter. Okay, remember there's going to be a lot of doubling over, a lot of mentioning the facts again and again and again to be litigious. But hey, like I said, we read the whole document here. Moreover, Epstein actively encouraged certain of his victims to recruit additional girls to similarly be sexually abused. Epstein incentivized his victims to become recruiters by paying these victim recruiters hundreds of dollars for each girl that they brought to Epstein. In so doing, Epstein maintained a steady supply of new victims to exploit. The New York residents. At all times relevant in this indictment, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, possessed and controlled a multi-story private residence on the upper side of Manhattan, New York, i.e. the New York residence. Between at least in or about 2002 and in or about 2005, Epstein abused minor victims at the New York residence by causing his victims to be recruited to engage in paid sex acts with him. 9. When a victim arrived at the New York residence, she typically would be escorted to a room with a massage table where she would perform a massage on Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant. The victims were as young as 14 years of age, were told by Epstein or other individuals, there it is, or other individuals, so hopefully, again, there are going to be more indictments to come, to partially or fully undress before beginning the massage. During the encounter, Epstein would escalate the nature and scope of the physical contact with his victims to include, among other things, sex acts such as groping and direct and indirect contact with the victim's genitals. Epstein typically would also masturbate during these sexualized encounters, asked victims to touch him while he masturbated, and touched victims' genitals with his hands or with sex toys. In connection with each sexual encounter, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, or one of his employees or associates, paid the victim in cash. Victims typically were paid hundreds of dollars in cash for each encounter. 11. Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, knew that many of his New York victims were underage, including because certain victims told him their age. Further, once these minor victims were recruited, many were abused by Epstein on multiple subsequent occasions at the New York residence. Epstein sometimes personally contacted victims to schedule appointments at the New York residence. In other instances, Epstein directed employees and associates. Let's stop there. So again, in the Jane Doe 43 indictment, okay, let's see if we can just look this up really quickly. Butlers. Yes. So aside from the people named, the co-conspirators were various housekeepers and butlers at these locations that would also help procure, set these things up, keep their mouths shut, and sign non-disclosure agreements, as well as, if ever contacted by law enforcement, shut their mouths and direct them to Epstein's lawyers. Okay? Think about that. So this guy did have an absolute vast network. All right, back to the indictment. Let's see. When a victim would recruit another girl for Epstein, he paid both the victim recruiter and the new victim of hundreds of dollars in cash. Through these victim recruiters, Epstein gained access to and was able to abuse dozens of additional minor girls. And remember, that's Jane Doe 43. We've talked about Jane Doe 102, Jane Does 1 through 5. We know that there were at least 30 plus in that initial Palm Beach investigation that took up charges against Epstein. We know that the Miami Herald contacted at least 80 people from previous work that I've done. And Virginia Roberts, who is one of the main people behind these allegations, said that Epstein said he had been with thousands of girls. And everything she saw made her believe that was true. And again, I don't know why she wouldn't after seeing all this horrific activity. In particular, certain recruiters brought dozens of additional minor girls to the New York residence to give massages to and engage in sex acts with Epstein, the defendant. Epstein encouraged victims to recruit additional girls by offering to pay these victim recruiters for every additional girl they brought to Epstein. When a victim recruiter accompanied a new minor victim to the New York residence, both the victim recruiter and the new minor victim were paid hundreds of dollars by Epstein for each encounter. In addition, certain victim recruiters routinely scheduled these encounters through Employee 1. So I would assume that Employee 1 is Ghislaine Maxwell. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's Kellen. But that also tells me, because this was a sealed indictment, that there's going to be an arrest of Employee 1. And if this is just Employee 1, hopefully Employees 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc., are also going to get arrested. Their names will also be outed. And we will find out even more about this network and the people that these victims were being paid to have sex with, not just Epstein. Let's get that specific. Who sometimes asked the recruiters to bring a specific minor girl for Epstein. In addition, the recruiting and abusing minor girls in New York, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, created a similar network of minor girls to victimize in Palm Beach, Florida, where Epstein owned, possessed, and controlled another large residence, i.e. the Palm Beach residence. And let's go back, because right now we're really only talking about Florida and New York in this indictment, by the way. And we're about halfway through the indictment. But I want people to understand this was an international ring. Santa Fe, New Mexico. San Antonio, Texas. Okay? I think that's Pine Bluff, Arkansas right there. The Bahamas, of course, the infamous Virgin Island property. You see Atlantic City is in there, St. Louis, and on and on and on. International ring. That's what this was. Okay? So when they talk about a similar scheme in New York and Florida, you can bet your ass he had a similar scheme everywhere else. And remember that sweetheart deal where he had to register as a sex offender? He didn't have to do that in 30 of those states. The only charge they gave him was a 16-year-old girl, and unfortunately in this country, in 30 of those states, that's the age of consent. By the way, New Mexico is one of those states, so he didn't have to register there where he had a property. Let's get the facts straight. In addition to recruiting and abusing minor girls in New York, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, created a similar network of minor girls to victimize in Palm Beach, Florida, where Epstein owned, possessed, and controlled another large residence. Epstein frequently traveled from New York to Palm Beach by private jet. Shocking. Before which an employee or associate would ensure that minor victims were available for encounters upon his arrival in Florida. Had it all set up, baby. And remember, that little black book and those flight logs, that's one black book from one residence, and those flight logs are a partial flight log from one pilot on one aircraft. And we know there was at least one other helicopter, possibly a second, and two other pilots are named in that Jane Doe 43 document. We've gone over it in past work. By the way, guys, if you don't know about me and you want to know about this and all the work that I've been doing over the past, really, this is just the past few months, but I've been doing it for years and years and years. Just go to the Them Too playlist over on my channel. If you're not subscribed, now's the time to join the Bermas Brigade. We're not only going to read the rest of this indictment, we're going to go through the entire press conference and show you the highlights and lowlights and what my analysis of that is. And we're going to continue to go through the unsealed documents that the media is now really ignoring in light of this. They should be digging deeper, folks. They should be doing more work on it, period. Okay, so here's employee 2 and 3. Guys, again, let's go back. Are any of these employees the ones named in this? Remember, this is all about the New York. Are we talking about Kellen, Groff, Natalia Malashev? It's a great question. Obviously, Maxwell would be one of them. Maxwell would be the main one, and we need to go through her unsealed documents because I'm sure there's a lot of revelations there. At the Palm Beach residence, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, engaged in a similar course of abusive conduct. When a victim initially arrived at the Palm Beach residence, she would be escorted to a room, sometimes by an employee of Epstein's, including at times 2 assistants, employees 2 and employee 3. I would think that one of those at least is Kellen, who, as described herein, were also responsible for scheduling sexual encounters with minor victims. In that Jane Doe 43 document, they would also schedule the travel plans. Once inside, the victim would provide a nude or semi-nude massage for Epstein, who would himself typically be naked. During these encounters, Epstein would escalate the nature and scope of the physical conduct or contact to include sex acts such as groping and indirect contact with the victim's genitals. Epstein would also typically masturbate during these encounters, ask victim to touch him while he masturbated, and touch victims' genitals with his hands or with sex toys. In connection with each sexual encounter, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, or one of his employees or associates, paid the victims in cash. Victims typically were paid hundreds of dollars for each encounter. And I know this is repetitive, guys, but this is how they do indictments. And I'm telling you, at the end, when they talk about asset forfeiture, I'm getting a little excited. Because if they can actually take Epstein's properties, they can really hurt this network. Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, knew that certain of his victims were underage, including because certain victims told him their age. In addition, as with the New York victims, many Florida victims, once recruited, were abused by Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, on multiple additional occasions. Epstein, the defendant, who during the relevant time period was frequently in New York, would arrange for employee 2 or other employees to contact victims by phone in advance of Epstein's travel to Florida to ensure appointments were scheduled for when he arrived. In particular, in certain instances, employee 2 placed phone calls to minor victims in Florida to schedule encounters at the Palm Beach residence. At the time of certain of those phone calls, Epstein and employee 2 were in New York, New York. Additionally, certain of the individuals victimized at the Palm Beach residence were contacted by phone by employee 3 to schedule these encounters. Moreover, as in New York, to ensure a steady stream of minor victims, Epstein, the defendant, asked and enticed certain victims in Florida to recruit other girls to engage in sex acts. Epstein paid hundreds of dollars to victim recruiters for each additional girl they brought to the Palm Beach residence. So once again, this is what he was doing everywhere. So statutory allegations. From at least in or about 2002 up to and including in or about 2005 in the Southern District of New York. And by the way, that's really narrow. So that doesn't make me very happy. I wish that it was broader than that. That's a red flag. We'll see what they had to say at the press conference. But again, if you're reading these unsealed documents, there's allegations going far back to the mid-90s. And there's allegations this continued up and through 2017. In the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Epstein, the defendant, and others known and unknown. So they're saying right now that there are possibly other people out there that are unknown co-conspirators, willingly and knowingly did combine, conspire, confederate, and agree together and with each other to commit an offense against the United States, to wit, sex trafficking of minors in violation of Title 18, Section 1591A and B. It was a part and object of the conspiracy that Epstein, the defendant, and others known and unknown would and did in the affecting interstate and foreign commerce. So now we're talking about foreign commerce. So now we're talking about those international portions that I was discussing earlier, right here. Grenada, Tangier, Paris, and London. Now we're talking about those locations too. Excellent. I like that. That's a good sign in this indictment, everybody, as far as I'm concerned. In and affecting interstate and foreign commerce, recruit, entice, harbor, transport, provide, and obtain by any means a person and to benefit financially and receiving anything of value from participation in a venture which has engaged in any such act, knowing that the person had not attained the age of 18 years and would be caused to engage in a commercial sex act in violation of Title 18, Code 1591A and B. Let's see. Overt acts in furtherance of the conspiracy and to effect the illegal objective thereof. The following overt acts, among others, were committed in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere. In or about 2004, Epstein, the defendant, enticed and recruited multiple minor victims, including minor victims identified herein as minor victim 1, minor victim 2, and minor victim 3. This is awesome. This is awesome that we have at least 3 victims that have come forward in this. This is huge. I'm not sure who they are. Obviously, they've not been named yet. To engage in sex acts with Epstein at his residence in Manhattan, New York, and Palm Beach, Florida, after which he provided them with hundreds of dollars in cash for each encounter. In or about 2002, minor victim 1 was recruited to engage in sex acts with Epstein and was repeatedly sexually abused by Epstein. Shocking. At the New York residence over a period of years and was paid hundreds of dollars for each encounter. Epstein was also encouraged and enticed minor victim 1 to recruit other girls to engage in paid sex acts, which she did. Epstein asked another minor victim how old she was, and minor victim 1 answered truthfully. And you got to wonder if that would be some of the 14-year-olds we're talking about. In or about 2004, employee 1, located in the Southern District of New York and on behalf of Epstein, placed a telephone call to minor victim 1 in order to schedule an appointment for minor victim 1 to engage in paid sex acts with Epstein. So these victims are basically turned witnesses even on each other and explaining how the trafficking network worked when they were younger. In or about 2004, minor victim 2 was recruited to engage in sex acts with Epstein and was repeatedly sexually abused by Epstein at the Palm Beach residence over a period of years and was paid hundreds of dollars after each encounter. Epstein also engaged and enticed minor victim 2 to recruit other girls to engage in paid sex acts, which she did. In or about 2005, employee 2, located in the Southern District of New York and on behalf of Epstein, placed a telephone call to minor victim 2 in order to schedule an appointment for minor victim 2 to engage in paid sex acts with Epstein. In or about 2005, minor victim 3 was recruited to engage in sex acts with Epstein and was repeatedly sexually abused by Epstein at the Palm Beach residence over a period of years and was paid hundreds of dollars for each encounter. Epstein also encouraged and enticed minor victim 3 to recruit other girls to engage in paid sex acts, which she did. Epstein asked minor victim 3 how old she was, and minor victim 3 answered truthfully. In or about 2005, employee 2, located in the Southern District of New York, on behalf of Epstein, placed a telephone call to minor victim 3 in Florida in order to schedule an appointment for minor victim 3 to engage in paid sex acts with Epstein. We're almost there, guys. We're 3/4 of the way through this. Remember to thumbs this video up, share it. If you're not subscribed, now's the time to join the Bermas Brigade. Again, we're doing 3, 4, 5, 6, sometimes 7 videos a day, not only about Epstein, Nexium, Assange, Iran, Syria, DARPA, Netanyahu, Assad, you name it, Koch, Soros, all the taboo subjects that actually matter, we cover here. So if you're not subscribed, get subscribed now. All right, so now we're down to count 2. This is the sex trafficking second count here, okay? The allegations contained in paragraphs 1 through 19 and 22 of this indictment are repeated and realleged as if fully set forth wherein. So we won't read the whole thing again, but there it is. They're, again, very repetitive in these indictments. From at least in or about 2002 up to including 2005, let's see. If this is the same exact thing, we're just going to continue. Yeah, here's the forfeiture allegations, because it was just literally the same exact thing there. And as a result of committing the offense alleged in count 2 of this indictment, Epstein, the defendant, shall forfeit to the United States, oh boy, any property, real and personal, that was used or intended to be used to commit or to facilitate the commission of the offense alleged in count 2. And any property, real or personal, constituting or derived from any proceeds obtained directly or indirectly as a result of this offense alleged in count 2, or any property traceable to such property, and the following specific property. So we know for sure that they're going to be taking what they're about to list here. I hope they take more. This is a big thing. The asset forfeiture of this stuff could really cripple this network. The lot or parcel of land, together with its buildings, appurtenances, improvements, fixtures, attachments, and easements, located at 9 East 71st Street, New York, with block number 1386 and lot number 10, owned by Maple Inc. So that's theirs now. Substitute asset provision. If any of the above described forfeitable property as a result of any act or omission of the defendant. See, that's interesting. Can they get more? Cannot be located upon the exercise of due diligence, has been transferred or sold to, deposited with a third person, has been placed beyond the jurisdiction of the court, has been substantially diminished in value, or has been commingled with other property which cannot be subdivided without difficulty. It is the intent of the United States pursuant to 21 U.S.C. 853 and 28 U.S.C. 2461C to seek forfeiture of any other property of the defendants up to the value of the above forfeitable property. So I guess we'll see, guys. But here it is. And it's Jeffrey S. Berman, the United States Attorney's office, right there. We read the whole thing. Guys, we do real news here. That's what we're about. And again, if you're not part of the Bermas Brigade, now's the time to thumbs this video up, share it, and subscribe. We're doing 30 to 50 videos a week. I just did 26 minutes on air, and I'm doing this with you guys with a monthly GoFundMe. It's awesome. We're about 2/3 of the way, 21 days into this monthly GoFundMe. We're about 2/3 of the way to where we need to be. And I'm not going to bullshit you and tell you I'm going to do all this special stuff. You're going to get secret stuff on levels. No, what I'm going to do is continue to bring you the real news and focus on this. And try to be what the mainstream media is not. Delve into these documents so you can read them yourselves. There's not many people doing these deep dives and letting you decide. It's not about left or right. I'm not a conservative. I'm not a liberal. It's always been about right and wrong, and I'm about bringing people together. So, guys, thank you so much. And remember, we're going to go over the entire press conference regarding the Epstein arrest coming up probably within the next hour. So make sure that you also ring that bell for notifications so you can come join the conversation. Thank you guys again, and I will see you all on the flip side.